back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Here is a place that we can talk about disability inclusion to bring awareness and make the world just a little bit brighter. My name is Janelle, and today I am wearing a purple shirt with the words Staff Track Austin on it. This is a camp that I volunteered for kids in foster care, and I do every year. It's so wonderful. Today I want to talk about what it means to be and how to be disability friendly. Now, the world is full of people with disabilities, and we cannot just sit and act like it's not a thing, because it's a thing. Baby, we out here. Okay? It is also the only minority that anybody can join at any point in their life. You never know when you might end up developing or having a disability later on in life, in your childhood, who knows? So, it's good to be disability friendly for everybody's sake. So here's some ways to do that. Number 1, don't use offensive or ableist language. Don't. You can make a pledge right now, put your hand over your heart, whatever you gotta do, to say, I will not use ableist language. I will not use offensive language towards those with disabilities. Now you might say, I can't do that yet. I can't make that pledge yet because I don't know what it is. I got you. I got you. These are things that seem really small. You might hear them often by people and not even realize it. There are some that are bigger that we're not going to use, but we'll talk about that first. We'll talk about the bigger ones. So, the R word. We're done using that. There's no reason to say that word. It's 2022 when this is being recorded. I'm sure when you're watching this, it might be a different year. But there's no need. It's offensive. It's an ugly word. People have died over that word. So we're done with that word. Okay? That's just one. Smaller things that people might not notice are ableist or offensive language towards those with disabilities. Could be things like, oh my gosh, this is not me. This is what I've heard. Oh my gosh, she's so OCD about that. We're not using that type of language because it's not, just because somebody might be, I've heard people use that when somebody has to organize something or clean. Oh, they're so OCD about that. That is not okay because that is not the core of what OCD is. And people with OCD that do have that subcategory of OCD where they need to organize something, symmetrical, cleanliness, and have those types of obsessions, it taunts them. They do not like it. So it's not something that you're just going to throw around. Like, oh, yeah, no biggie. Yeah, she's so OCD about that. We're done. Another thing. I can't stand when this happens, specifically because I deal with this. With Tourette syndrome, people always like to use that as a joke, as Tourette syndrome being the butt of the joke. If somebody is doing something that they are like cussing somebody out or just kind of out of order in court or something, people always want to say or have a tendency to use this ableist language and say, oh, that person must have Tourette's, as a joke. This is not funny because people who really deal with it are not laughing when they really can't control what their body is doing, or they really can't control what they're saying, or they're ticking so much that they're sore, or they're ticking and they start having self-interest tics, or they might be part of the 10% that does have the tick that causes them to say socially inappropriate things and cuss, and they don't want to. So no, it's not funny. And just because somebody is doing that voluntarily and meaningfully does not mean they have Tourette syndrome, because that is something that is involuntary and not meaningful. So we're done saying things like that. We're done saying, oh, she's so bipolar, when somebody is upset about something when they were happy before, because emotions change. That's a natural part of life. So we're done saying things like that. These are the examples I'm talking about. So now that you know a few, you can take the pledge and say, I will not use ableist language to my knowledge, such as using the R word or calling somebody, insert here, because of something they're doing. It's not funny, it's not cool, and it's not disability friendly. So We're done with that. Number 2, very important, I would say a way to be disability friendly is to understand that others need accommodations, even if you don't understand why, or even if you feel like, oh, this is too much, this is so much work, this is so much extra work. It's not for you. It's for somebody else that really needs it, and that's okay. They need that accommodation, and it's not an inconvenience to provide it. Yes, it might take you a little bit more time to try to maybe set that up, but it's not an inconvenience because it's helpful and inclusive for the person that actually needs it. Some great examples. I have a lot of deaf friends. They need captions, interpreting, all kinds of things like that. It's not an inconvenience. Yes, it takes extra time to add the captions, but things like social media make it super easy now. If you're creating something on, any other social media platform, there's usually just a button to press that will transcribe your audio into captions. YouTube has auto captions. All you gotta do in there is go in there and edit maybe a few words that are they misheard and mistranscribed. It's not that hard anymore because technology has allowed it to be where you don't have to type out every single thing. And it's important. It's good. It's good for people that are deaf. It's good for people that are learning a new language. It's good for when people are trying to watch content or watch something and they're not able to have their audio on. So it just helps everybody. Another good example is maybe if somebody needs something like a fidget toy. I have a ton. They're all in this drawer right here. One day maybe I will do a video on that. But I know that there have been people at times, whether it's teachers or facilitators in meetings and things like that say oh, that's so distracting. Why do they get to have that and nobody else does? Types of things. And it's not a privilege oh yeah, here you go. It's a tool, an accommodation to help the person focus or reduce their anxiety. So for example, if somebody has ADHD, if you're going to make them sit there and force them to just look at you and listen to what you're saying, they're not really listening because that's not the way their brain is set up. Their brain is set up to where if they're doing something like playing with a fidget toy and looking at that and listening to you, then they can actually hear you. Maybe you don't get it, but it's just not the way that your brain is set up. So understand that people have accommodations that they may need, and even if you don't get why, or you think, oh, this is so much extra work, it's not an extra thing. It's just something that is needed. And that's okay. It's the same thing like when little kids need thicker crayons or thicker pencils to learn how to grasp because their hands' bones are not fully formed. It's not an inconvenience. It's not extra. It's an accommodation. Same thing for people with disabilities. And third, I would say a good way to be disability friendly is to acknowledge all forms of communication. Most of the time when people think about communication or talking, they think about speaking, like what I'm doing right now. But that's not all forms of communication. There are many forms of communication. There are people that, like I said earlier, use sign language. Acknowledge that as a form of communication. If there is somebody that is interpreting for them while they're speaking to you, do not look at the interpreter. Look at the person speaking to you. If somebody uses an AAC device or an alternative communication use where they have a talker or an app that they use to speak for them as they type or point out pictures, that is a form of them communicating, and acknowledge that. If somebody's trying to let you know something gesturally or with their body language, acknowledge that as a form of communication. We naturally do that all the time with people that might just make certain facial expressions and we don't realize it. That is a form of communication. Body language makes up most of our communication, more than our spoken language. So, for example, if you are talking to somebody and start making jokes and they're laughing, and you might say something and their face turns to a way that looks like they're offended. They might move their head back and maybe take a step back. They didn't have to verbally or audibly say anything. That communicated something to you right there, whether it be that was a sensitive subject, or, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or simply they didn't like that. That is a form of communication. And if somebody's doing that in whatever you're doing with them and they might try to move away or create some distance, that's a form of communication saying, I don't like this, I don't want that, not right now. And you should acknowledge that. There are some people that communicate with their eyes, and people just think, oh, they're looking around, oh, they're not really talking. Well, let me just ask this person, let me just ask their caregiver. But if they have a method where they're able to communicate with you in that manner, and that's how they prefer to, then you should acknowledge that. I know one person that communicates through his foot. If you go through the alphabet, through the letters, he's basically like trying to get you to spell out what he's trying to say. So if you're saying like A, B, C, D, E, and he'll move his foot up and down, kind of like replicating a nod for a yes, then that means you got it, okay? And then you move on to the next letter. If you messed up somewhere, he moves his foot back and forth, replicating a head shake no. And we've had great conversations before. Like, it's been wonderful. Cognitively, he understood everything I was saying. I understood what he was trying to say. And it's important to acknowledge those forms of communication and not try to devalue them just because they're not as quick as you would like them to be or as convenient as you would like them to be. So, a great way to be disability friendly is to acknowledge all forms of communication. There are so many other things, so many other tips that I could give on being disability friendly and how to do that, but I think those 3 are like my top 3. Like, these are really good standard foundations on how to be disability friendly, disability inclusive, whatever term you'd like. And try to implement these into your day. Try to implement these if you see somebody using a tool that you don't understand. Instead of judging them, just assume that it's an accommodation that they need. If you hear somebody saying something that's like, oh my gosh, this person is so insert condition here, and they're using it as a joke, maybe just tell them that's not really the best thing to do, because there are people that are dealing with that and it really does affect them. And if somebody's trying to communicate with you through a method that you don't use, don't assume that they don't understand what you're saying. Even there might be people that are, completely non-speaking or non-verbal. Don't assume that that means that they don't understand anything that you're saying, but acknowledge any form that they're trying to use to communicate with you, like any form, whether that's body language, signing, using a text-to-speech application, or grabbing your hand and guiding you towards something. That's another form of communication, and just acknowledge that. That's important. Please like and share and subscribe and comment and do all the fun things. Definitely share so that we can spread awareness to make the world more inclusive and make it just a little bit brighter. Thank you guys. Shine bright.